push myself a bit there. It's a little bit cold, so it's hard on the breath. We'll head back to the office, and I still want to talk about that whole weight loss thing. So losing weight to run faster. Now, I do want to give an update on exactly how my marathon training is going, but if you do want to skip ahead to where I talk a little bit more about the losing weight and what my plans are going forward for the marathon in terms of weight loss and how I'm going to do that, you can actually skip ahead. I put some timestamps down below in the description and just right down on that timeline below. So when it comes to my actual training and how my run went this morning, if you watch any of my previous videos, and I'll put the link up above where I was talking about what plan I'm actually doing, but I am doing the Hal Higdon Intermediate 1 program, and on Saturday, which is today, probably not when I get this posted, but on Saturdays I actually have a pace run. Most Saturdays mean that I'm actually running a marathon pace run, or what my projected pace is. What's interesting is most of the other runs on this particular plan are easy runs or long runs, which are also easy runs. What this actually means for me is that on Saturdays, it actually gives me the opportunity to push even a little bit harder, where so many of my other runs, all of my other runs for the most part, are pretty easy runs, but it allows me to push a little bit harder and maybe even beyond what I intend to run the marathon at. Now, let's be frank, I have not run a marathon. I've mentioned that in a lot of my videos previously. I've not run a 5K, 10K, half marathon. When we talk about what my projected marathon pace is, I don't really have a good solid pace in mind, to be honest with you. I've told myself maybe a little bit under 4 hours, or the 4 hours is a good benchmark. Having not really trained running, I don't know if that's it. I also don't know if, relative to where I'm at now, how much progress I'm going to make in the next 16 weeks. There's a lot of things that are pretty unpredictable, but I've told myself a little bit under 4 hours. And when it comes to these pace runs on Saturdays, the last few weekends I've actually been running them a little bit quicker. Those are only around 8 kilometers, and I've been pushing pretty hard through those. But again, I'm 16 weeks away, still 16 weeks away from the marathon, so who knows? I've been running them quite a bit faster though. And what I actually ran this morning's run at, and it was a little bit over 8 kilometers, was at a 5:20 per kilometer pace, or an 8:37 roughly per mile pace, if my math's right. And if I'm able to run that over the course of a marathon, that would put me in at 3 hours and 45 minutes. But I honestly, that's so far off from what I think I'm able to do. Let's be real, let's be frank. It's my first marathon, so I think even running it in under 4 hours, having not been a real cardio person, is a pretty lofty goal. So even though I've set that goal, the real goal, the first goal, is just to finish the marathon. It's in May, so hopefully, fingers crossed, if I keep healthy, I'm going to be able to push further and actually do at least one more marathon this summer, hopefully in the fall. I turned 40 October 30th, which is a little bit exciting. The one thing I did want to note, and again in my last video I talked about actually getting the chance to sign up for that marathon, that it's official that I'll be running it in May. The backup date for that, if it doesn't run, is the end of October. It's actually going to be on my birthday, so who knows? You never know. And even if I do run the one in May, maybe my birthday, the end of October, I'll actually pick another marathon, find one on that day, and I'll be able to set a new PR. Actually go for it once I've got sort of a base after this first marathon. So goal number 1, finish the marathon. Goal number 2, and the stretch goal, run that in a little bit under 4 hours. But it was a good run this morning. Yes, it was kind of cold, and I talk about being able to cold, and I post, if you follow me on Instagram, and I'll put that down below. But if you do follow me on Instagram, you will notice that I post a lot about running early in the morning in the cold, and I love that, and I love being Canadian, and I love being able to prove that I'm able to run in the cold. But at the same time, I'm totally not immune to it. Last weekend ran in the cold, and actually you're not going to be able to see this on camera, but my ears actually froze up so much and got a little bit of frostbite, and they're now flaking. It's almost like a bad sunburn. The tips of my ears, the bottom of both my ears, are flaking quite badly. But so let's move on to what we're going to be talking about in today's video, and that is losing weight to actually run faster during the marathon. Now, to put this into context, I am actually about 20-ish pounds heavier than I was a little bit over a year ago. I should say that there was a point, and I'll try to find an old picture. I didn't take a whole lot of pictures, honestly, back in the day, but there was a point where I was quite a bit heavier than I am now. I'm sitting at about the 185 mark. I think it was 184 something this morning. But there was a time where I was around the 250-ish mark, and I spent a couple of years working really hard to get that weight down, to get more healthy. This whole journey that I'm on to get more healthy has helped me lose some of that weight. But now I'm looking ahead, and I'm 20-ish pounds heavier than I was a little bit over a year ago. A lot of that has been spent in the gym, so hopefully some of that's actually been muscle gains. I am looking to strip down for that marathon. I've got about 16 weeks, 15, 16 weeks before the actual marathon. My goal is to lose about 15 pounds, because theoretically that means I'm going to be able to run that marathon just a little bit faster. But there are some things that we need to take into consideration before we're able to just say, if you are lighter, you're going to be able to run the marathon faster. And I figured, why not talk about it in this video, and going forward in other videos I'll be able to provide updates not just on my running, but honestly exactly where my weight is, because I'm really interested in trying to optimize everything that I can. Even though it's only my first marathon, I still want to do the best I can with that marathon. So if losing a little bit of weight is going to help me, then that's what I'm going to do. Now, if you do a quick Google search on lose weight running or something, anything like that, there's going to be a ton of information, and it obviously makes sense. We cannot break the laws of thermodynamics. And if you lose a lot of weight while running, it happens because you're burning so many more calories when you're running than you are when you're not running, that those extra calories go into losing that weight. Now, there's a couple of things that you really need to balance. Is that weight coming from just fat, muscle? And I'll get into that, but basically, we can't break the laws of thermodynamics.
I'm with you, Marge. Lisa, get in here! In this house, we obey the laws of thermodynamics!
So if all things created equal, if I've been eating sort of in maintenance and then I start running a whole bunch, I am going to lose weight. Where that all gets just a little bit more interesting is when you Google something a little bit more specific than just something like losing weight while running. And what I mean by that is, if you go out and Google losing weight while training for a marathon, there's a couple of red flags, a couple of things that often pop up in terms of things you might want to consider, a couple of things you might want to be careful of, and a couple of just obvious factors that that could happen if you are training for a marathon when it comes to your weight. And the first thing is that some people just simply don't lose weight when they're training for a marathon. You're putting yourself through a lot of stress, your body through a lot of stress, and ghrelin is coming and punching you in the face, telling you to eat. You need to take in more calories because you are burning so many more calories. Oftentimes, there are people out there who actually gain a little bit of weight when they're training for a marathon and don't actually lose some weight. And that has actually been my experience so far. I've actually put on a couple of pounds since I started training for the marathon, which I honestly didn't think would happen. But when I reflect on how I've been paying so much more attention to making sure I get the amount of fuel I need in for my training. And that has affected my weight. And I've actually put on a couple of pounds. You could argue that that is good weight, that it's not all bad weight. Water weight, some of that stuff, it's only a few pounds, but now the focus is to strip some of that weight so I can be a faster runner when it comes to the marathon. So if you are liking this video so far, head on over to my channel and try out a couple more of my videos. And if there's something there that you think you like, if there's something there that gives you lots of value, please consider hitting that subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you get notified every time I put out a new video. Now let's get back to talking about weight loss. Secondly, there is some risk to restricting your calories too much. It's pretty well in anything that you do when it comes to training, is that you have to ask yourself the question, if you are trying to lose weight, or if you just are naturally losing weight when you bump up the training, are you restricting your calories too much to a point where it's actually affecting your performance, and also to a point where are you losing body fat? Are you losing muscle? Are you probably losing a mix of the two of them? And how are you balance that to be the most effective and most efficient to reach whatever your goals might be? But calorie restriction, being very, very careful that you're not being too strict on that so that you're not negatively affecting all of the other goals that you have in mind when training for anything, not even just a marathon.
Put that cookie down now!
And the last thing you have to be really, really careful of, and I just kind of touched on it, is that fat that you're losing, or is that weight that you're losing fat or muscle? Probably a combination of the two, but if it's coming at the expense of too much muscle, you're just not going to be as strong or as effective as a runner. So you need to be able to create that balance, not lose the weight too quick. We've all heard that before, but it's very true, and it is one of the red flags that you see whenever you start doing some research around losing weight to train for a marathon. A lot of people, honestly, or at least some people in some of the videos when you just go on YouTube, make the suggestion that don't even consider it. Don't worry about weight loss, eat what you feel you need to eat, and that's a lot of what I'm doing right now, is eating what I feel I need to eat. But I also feel that I would be able to run faster if I can do it properly and lose some of that excess weight. If you did find this video because you are thinking about losing some weight to run a little bit faster, there is some research out there that would suggest that you would run 1 to 2 seconds faster per mile per pound of body weight. But there's a couple of really important things that you need to take into consideration, like the stuff I mentioned earlier in this video around so many variables that would affect that. So whether that's accurate or not can be brought into question. And for me, honestly, I'm really not setting any sort of, if I lose this much weight, I'm going to be that much faster, for 2 reasons. One, I've never run a marathon, so I don't really have a benchmark on how fast I can run a marathon. And 2, since there are so many variables, for me, it's just going to come down to tracking myself, tracking my weight loss, tracking what I'm doing the best I can so that it doesn't have a negative impact on my performance through my training, and losing whatever weight I can and not losing too much muscle, and just trying to be as efficient and effective with it as possible. And wherever that lands on race day is all right with me. So how am I actually planning on doing this? Well, there's a number of different things that I'm doing. Some of them I've done in the past and some of them I've had some real success with, so I'm familiar with them. But one of them is using Myfitnesspal. With Myfitnesspal, the couple of things that I do want to mention there, first of all, you need to be as accurate as possible. I know if you do some Google searching on it, a lot of people out there will say that nobody is able to track things accurately. Labels lie, people don't measure properly. But the point is to track as accurately as possible. As long as you're consistent with that, I find that even just the mental part of tracking everything kind of keeps you more accountable. And make sure that you're honest with yourself as well. When you're putting stuff into Myfitnesspal, constantly reminding yourself it's really weird, but when you're plugging things in, even though you know somebody else is not going to necessarily see this unless you want to show them, you still sometimes, I have this weird thing where I might lie or not put something in because I don't want to see it on there for whatever reason. But if you're not accurate enough with what you're recording and you're not honest with what you're recording, tracking through Myfitnesspal or tracking through any sort of food tracking app in terms of setting your calories is just useless, quite frankly. You need to be as accurate as possible and as honest as possible when you're tracking through Myfitnesspal. But if you have not done that before, if you have not started with tracking your calories, it's not something you've done before, you can kind of get a rough idea as a starting point if you go to, there is a TDEE calculator. There's a few of them online. One of the more popular ones, I'll make sure to link in the description down below. But basically you're going on there and you're being honest with that as well and putting in as much information as possible, and it spits out a total calorie expenditure, daily expenditure for you. Now, what's really important here is this is just sort of a benchmark and starting point, and you need to keep accurate information on exactly what you're doing throughout the day, what you're doing throughout the week, throughout the month, if you want to use this TDEE calculator as an effective tool, because it is just a starting point. Everybody's different. Everybody's going to be burning different amounts of calories, but it does give you at least a starting point to start from, and then you can work from there. After a week, reevaluate, see if you need to add more calories, decrease calories, add more training depending upon what you're training for. Start there and go from there. For me, probably around 2,300 calories is what I'll be eating to start with. I know some of the weight's going to come off really, really quick. Some of that's water weight just based on the amount of carbs that I've been eating and the amount of carbs that are probably going to come off the top in terms of my total calories. Tracking accurately. Now, the other 3 things that I'm doing sort of all fall into a similar category in terms of exactly how I'm going to treat them. One is that I will be weighing myself every single day as soon as I wake up in the morning. 2, I will be taking progress pics every single day as soon as I wake up in the morning. And 3 is I will be taking tons of notes in terms of my training on a day-to-day basis, just to see whether some of those things, because it's really important that if you are restricting your calories that you determine whether that is affecting your training or not. One of the best ways to do that is to keep good notes on how things are going. If a training session comes up as not being as good or as successful as you thought it could have been, what are the reasons why? Did you get a great sleep the night before? Did you happen to, whatever the reasons are, were you feeling under the weather? But as long as you're keeping accurate and good information, sometimes that really helps because you can go back and compare and really dial in whether it was the diet or not. In terms of what I mean by using all 3 of those things in a very similar way when it comes to weighing yourself, progress pics, and taking notes, is that you need to be aware that things are going to fluctuate, that your weight can fluctuate day to day, that how your training is feeling can fluctuate day to day, and even how you look can fluctuate day to day. There are so many things that can go on, and not to have knee-jerk reactions to things, because your weight can go up one day and you don't need to completely adjust your diet just because of one day. You might look slightly bloated or something one day. You don't need to adjust everything you're doing just because of one day. Look at averages over time and hopefully things are moving in the right direction. But that's the one caution that I have with all that stuff. If you're taking pictures, weighing yourself, even in your notes, be careful because it can be very, very easy to have a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but don't allow yourself to do that. And if you find that that's happening to you, you might have to bag that all together. You might not be able to weigh yourself every day. You might not be able to take a progress pic every single day. But if you can, and you can use that, they can be very effective tools to just keep you on track and make sure that everything's moving in the right direction. Okay, so that's the end of the video. I just wanted to give you that update on how training was going. It's going really, really well, way better than I would have expected. And also, we're going to lose some weight here. We're going to push forward, lose a little bit of weight to make me more efficient, maybe even help me out with my joints. I'm not the tiniest guy possible. I'm not that heavy, but maybe I can even just help my body out a little bit, being a little bit lighter. With that said, my name is Matt, and this is what matters to Matt, and ultimately what matters to me most is my family, and I will see you in the next one.